This is a recorded lecture for Chapter 8 for Information Technology for Health Professionals. And in this chapter, we're going to look at information technology in the pharmacy. And this is a far more extensive chapter than some of the others in the sense that information technology is very much perforated or infiltrated or overtaken, if you will, the pharmaceutical areas in many levels. So the Food and Drug Administration, the federal agency responsible for protecting the public health by assuring the safety, efficiency, and security of human and veterinary drugs, biological products, medical devices, and our nation's food supply, cosmetics, and products that emit radiation. So the FDA is responsible for all of those elements. The federal agency responsible for protecting the public health, Food and Drug Administration, by advancing public health, by helping to speed innovations that make medicines and foods more effective, safer, and more affordable. And I'm not sure they fit all that, but they try. The FDA is helping the public get the accurate science-based information they need to use medicines and food to improve their health. So what the FDA does is establish a scientific process by which they prove whether a medication is effective, identify the side effects and the potential harm that a medication can cause, and to make sure that the public is informed of those. So the dangerous side effects of drugs appear only years after the drug has been proved and is on the market. And so the FDA usually requires trials for drugs before they put them out to the full market. So FDA can now require new trials to assess the safety of approved drugs. So they can, if a drug's out and we see it is causing side effects, the FDA can now go out and require a new trial to see if that's a problem. The PDUFA, Prescription Drug User Fees Act, renewed in 97, 2002, 2007, requires drug companies to pay fees to support the drug review process. So FDA is supported in part by the drug companies. Requires companies to pay annual fees for each manufacturing establishment and for each prescription drug product on the market. And that's an important step because it's having them be responsible for the policing of their medications. The Prescription Drug User Fee Act that we talked about, the user fees have steadily risen until in 1992, 51% of the FDA's drug review budget came from the companies that the FDA regulates. So over half of their budget comes from the pharmaceutical companies. Now, PDUFA 4 is now set to expire in 2012. PDUFA 5 will be presented to Congress in 2012, what was presented, and it continues. And now I don't even know what that number is, but this data is a few years old, obviously. The FDA appears to be ready to allow more consumer input in their decisions, so they are using more town hall kind of conferences to allow people to have input. The FDA is in conflict with pharmaceutical companies over the FDA's proposal to lengthen the review times because of the 2007 Congressional Drug Safety Requirements. Now, there's two opposing dynamic forces in the world of medications. There's the force of the pharmaceutical companies as well as the consumers that would like to have the approval process be quick. Because if you're a patient with a disease and there's a drug that could be used to treat you, and it's not available any other way, you want it to be available before you die. And so you'll push to have get that medication. And the pharmaceutical companies want to minimize the time lapse between the time that they develop these medications and the time that they are allowed to dispense them so they can get a return on their investment. So that's one side of the field. We have the FDA on the other side, which wants to make sure that the medications have been thoroughly evaluated and thoroughly vetted to make sure that the side effects, there's no undue side effects, and that there's a therapeutic value to the medications. And so that process can take quite a while. If you think about it, it could take as long as 5 years to really decide whether there's any long-term effect of a medication. So those two dynamic forces are always at odds when we're talking about approval of medications for the public. A consumer representative, the National Consumers League, NCL, stated the FDA should be funded out of the general treasury. If not possible, then the NCL advocates the user fees be added to the FDA's budget with no conditions. The FDA has many advisory panels. Some of their members have financial ties to the drug industry. So that the problem is that the panels that are evaluating this may have a financial interest in the outcome. Whether these facts have any effect on the FDA's drug oversight is a matter for debate. So the problem is that you have to have experts in the field. Experts in the field who work on the panel aren't solely paid by the panel. They have other jobs, if you will. And so when they have to be associated with the drug industry because that's what they do. So the question is how to eliminate any potential for conflict of interest. And that's one of the big issues the FDA has to deal with day to day. Financial interests must be disclosed in the individual drug trials. Meta-analysis of the study of all the studies of drug trials do not disclose conflict of interest. So we need to make sure that we understand if I'm evaluating a medication for the FDA that I don't have a conflict of interest to do so. And that isn't always doable because I may be the only person who can evaluate that medication, and I may be the only person who benefits from it. So it's kind of like the old story of the fox in the hen house managing the chickens. But on the other hand, it's just as you get more sophisticated, only a few people may have expertise on a given drug or a given treatment area. In June 2006, the FDA released information on drugs that are being sold without FDA review. In October 2008, President Bush signed the Ryan-Haidt Online Pharmacy Consumer Protection Act. It prohibits the dispensing of controlled substances over the internet unless the prescriber and the patient have met at least once in person. Before 2008, you get online and order medications, strangely enough. In 2010, a plan was released by the U.S. Intellectual Property Enforcement Coordinator to curb the sale of unsafe medications. In 2010, the Alliance of Safe Online Pharmacies estimated that 36 million Americans buy drugs online from any of 30 to 40,000 online pharmacies. So what's happening is we're starting to use online pharmacy care because it's cheaper in most cases. They don't have to have places for them to come to. They can be just warehouses. PharmacyChecker.com checks online pharmacies. One study found that prescription drugs ordered from online pharmacies verified by PharmacyCheck.com or the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy result in delivery of safe, genuine medication, and other sites may sell fake medications. So in some cases, these online pharmacies, we sell medications that really they aren't the medication. They could be a placebo, which means sugar pill. Biotechnology and the Human Genome Project, the rational drug design, uses computers to model disease-causing molecules and create models of molecules that will fix them. So that's one technique we're using at the biotechnology level. Biotechnology sees the human body as a collection of molecules, and if one molecule is causing disease, another should be modeled by a computer to fix it. So we're thinking more in terms of how to respond to that at the molecular level. Bioinformatics is the application of IT to biology, and it seeks to organize biological data into databases. So we're collecting all this data that we can use later. The Human Genome Project of 1999 to 2003 succeeded in mapping the human genome, the human gene, using computers to keep track of information. It attempts to understand the molecular basis of the genetic disease has increased exponentially because of this mapping. And it should be noted that although genetic predisposition is important, other factors play a role in the development of the disease. When you start talking about Human Genome Project, you have to start thinking about, where we start correcting babies before they're born, and we start adjusting DNA for chronic diseases or genetic diseases. There's a lot of questions as to how and why we would do that. The 1,000 Genomes Project provides a comprehensive public resource that supports researchers aiming to study genetic variation that might cause human disease. Its samples come with informed consent from many different populations. In 2010, the 1,000 Genome Project published a map of genetic differences which may help to explain susceptibility to diseases. Some people may not have the gene that gives them greater immunity to a given disease. And this is the Human Genome Project homepage, and you can look it up online and see what's going on. So it's genomics.energy.gov. This is an abstract of a DNA spiral, if you will. So developments in biotechnology include some of the following. Herceptin, which is used for breast cancer. Lucentis is in clinical trials for macular degeneration of the eye. Avastin, which is a fast-track status for treatment of cancer. Tarceva, which is an orphan drug status, which means it only is used for very rare forms of brain cancer. So the problem with orphan drugs is they're still expensive to develop, but they may only be like 3 or 4 people in the United States that have the disease. And then Exolair for asthma. So these are developments in biotechnology to improve the quality of care. New drugs approved in 2005 include Aranon to treat patients with certain cancers, Boostrix for a booster against tetanus, diphtheria, and pertussis. So instead of getting a new DPT, which is that stands for diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus, DTaP is called now, you would get a Boostrix, which would boost these without getting the full immunization. Bietta to treat type 2 diabetes. Flurex is a flu vaccine for adults, and Forticol is a nasal spray for osteoporosis. So these are new drugs that have been developed through biotechnology. Amitiza for treatment of chronic idiopathic constipation, and Dacogen for treatment of the myelodysplastic syndromes, formerly known as pre-leukemia. So we're starting to see these drugs that are being developed biotechnologically that are going to make those changes. Iraxis for the treatment of candida fungal infections, and candida is a fungus that can grow usually in the mucosa, even in the skin of humans. Gardasil is for the prevention of cervical cancer caused by HPV. Gardasil's development came out of studies that were done in the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I happened to be an administrator there at the time. I had no participation in the process, but it's interesting that Gardasil is a vaccine that stops the people from collecting HPV or getting HPV. And HPV causes, before the treatment, caused about 20,000 cases of cervical cancer in the United States every year. So we prevented 20,000 women from going through surgery, maybe removal of the uterus, and or other treatments in lieu of a vaccine. And then for a complete list of the new drugs approved, if you will, Jennifer and Brand Brunt bio-drug approvals, a year at first, February 9, 2010. You can find that in the journals. You can also, here's a list of some other drugs that are new drugs approved in 2009 and 2010. And I'm not going to go through these one by one, but they're just kind of a list to show you. And in 2006, the gene RUNX1 identified with chronic pain was found. In July of 2006, scientists made a major breakthrough in understanding the genetic makeup of Wolbachia bacteria that infect mosquitoes and other insects that spread malaria. So it really helped us to understand how that process occurs. In August 2006, researchers determined the structure of an important smallpox virus enzyme and how it binds to DNA. And this is crucial in the creation of drugs to fight smallpox downstream. Now, smallpox has supposedly been eliminated, but we're starting to see a resurgence due to the lack of we're worried about a resurgence to say that. In August 2006, the genes that increase the risk of heart attack were identified, and hypertension susceptibility genes were identified in February 2006. So once we identify the gene, we may identify a way to restructure that gene so we no longer have that disease problem. Excuse me. We use what's called antisense technology in this process of biotechnology. That's experimental technology used to shut off disease-causing genes. And there have been mixed results in trials because we probably don't thoroughly understand the mechanism they use. There are other genes that, when they're absent, a person is more susceptible to certain diseases. And so if a person, if a person doesn't have a certain gene, they may be more likely to get a disease. So the question is how to replace that. We also have RNA interface, and this is used by cells to turn genes off. And attempts at developing drugs using RNAi have yet been successful. We haven't really been able to develop an off switch yet. RNAi is currently being studied as a way to treat cancer and viruses by shutting off the mutation itself, so we can stop cancer biotechnologically without having to do surgery and things like that. Stem cells can develop into different types of cells. So stem cells are the base cells that all our cells develop from. For instance, in the world of connective tissue, blood, bone, fat tissue, cartilage all come from one single stem cell, and it differentiates into those different tissues. Now, theoretically, stem cells can repair the body, and as the stem cell divides, the new cells can remain a stem cell or become another kind of cell. And so it's possible that stem cell research can lead to regenerative or rehabilitative medicine. So we can counteract a disease or fix a disease based on stem cell research. In the past, scientists either had to use embryonic stem cells or generate embryonic-like stem cells, a difficult process. In 2011, scientists at the Scripps Research Institute succeeded in converting adult skin cells directly into beating heart cells. They were able to bypass this process. Now, stem cells might make possible new treatments for heart disease, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's because we replace the dysfunctional cells with now functional cells. So the symptoms essentially go away. The disease goes away. Pretty interesting research when you think about it. Now, when we talk about this, we talk about computer-assisted drug trials where we use software to simulate the trials. And computer-assisted trials don't replace human clinical trials, but they may give us insight into some of the problems we might have downstream with those given medications. The Physiome project is a project creating virtual organs, mathematical models in which to test medications. It's created a virtual heart using mathematical equations to simulate the process of the heart. It has been used to studies of irregular heartbeats. A draft of the lungs and skeletal system has been finished to carry on this Physiome project. So we can then be predictive in what medications are going to do to the body. The project is currently working on the digestive systems, the database of the cellular functions. And so mathematical models will not only allow the testing of drugs, but also enable medical engineers to fashion customized implants and surgeons to perform dry runs of surgeries. And the use of these models is still far from reality, but it is very, very close. Computer-assisted drug reviews. The FDA reviews new drugs. And in 1995, the FDA started a computerized review process using giant electronic spreadsheets to hold data. It made comparisons easier, and it increased the speed of the process. Now, when we talk about the pharmacy proper, the place that dispenses drugs, we talk about how computers have improved and eliminated some of the drug errors. Errors can be caused by software error within the computerized system, so they can be corrected. In computerization, any part of the prescription delivery of medication reduces the medical error. For instance, you can use what's called easy scripts. And so when I was at the university in New Mexico, they used easy scripts. And what would happen is you write a prescription, and if that patient was on another medication that would contraindicate that drug, it would tell you right away. Or it would also tell you all the side effects and all the contraindications for using that medication. So instead of giving somebody a medication and maybe mistaking, not remembering and interacting with the drug, it basically helped you do that. So it counteracted some of the medical error. It said, INH said in 2000 that their study that 80% of medical error was a problem with pharmaceuticals, and so we want to eliminate those. So we have computerized warning systems to prevent adverse drug events, if you will, through those instructions. In 2006, 7,000 medical errors caused a computerized physician order entry were analyzed, and dosing errors were the most common. So dosing errors and giving the wrong prescription levels, the wrong doses. Most errors were traced to faulty computer interfaces, miscommunication with other systems, and a lack of adequate decision support. So if a physician, by human error, gave the wrong dose, it would, in a good system, would come back and say, well, the normal dose is between here and here. Are you sure of that? And then the physician would have to validate they want a different dose. In July 2006, Preventing Medical Errors stressed that medication errors are still a serious problem, harming 1.5 million people per year. So it's still a significant issue. And then several thousand people die of medical errors, primarily drug errors, in the United States per year. We look at computers and drug errors. The adoption of electronic health records and e-prescribing are important steps for decreasing medical errors and reconciling errors to find out what caused them. A 2008 retrospective review of 10 studies found that CPOE and CDS, clinical decision support, decreased ADEs, adverse drug reactions, in half the studies. It was important. So medication reconciliation errors, medication reconciliation concerns identifying the most accurate list of patients' medications, so we keep track of that. And these errors typically occur when a patient changes their status, when they go from one place to another. That's why the portable medical record is so important from one site to another. So it's on a national a cloud, you might say, and available to everybody that needs it. The Institute of Healthcare Improvement has estimated that as much as 50% of medication errors and 20% of ADs in hospital result from mismanaged medication reconciliation, and stated that EHRs could make reconciliation errors nearly non-existent, electronic health records. So that we're really, computerization may make this problem a thing of history. Now, we look at the automated pharmacy. We now use robots to fill prescriptions. So we don't do it by human error now. We get a computer. At the computer, we write the prescription or put the prescription in the computer, and then it goes to a robot which fills the prescription. prescriptions are entered in the computer. Robot counts the tablets, the capsules, selects a vial, puts a label on the vial, and fills it. And this really eliminates human error. I always think of a patient that was on Zyrtec, which is an antihistamine, and was given Braxis. What is it? No, Zypraxis instead. And Zypraxis is an antidepressant drug. And so they set them side by side on the counter on the shelves, and the person that filled it incorrectly and could have hurt the patient badly. So the pharmacist will caps the vial and hands it to the customer, but it's all done by robot to eliminate human error. And that's really changed a lot of what happens nowadays. So this is using the robotic prescription dispensing system, which is much, much better. Via the interface, the pharmacy computer sends a fill command, and that fill command is created and a bottle is filled and labeled. There's another robotic arm, so you show how it's filled, and it will label it for you. It's pretty interesting. This is the scans the barcode, can scan the barcode and verify its prescription with an on-screen image of the medication. It shows you what it should look like and validate that it's the right medication. The pharmacist then delivers the medication to the patient and completes the prescription source by advising the patient of side effects and those kind of things. So when we talk about automating the hospital pharmacy, prescriptions entered in the computer link to the pharmacy, so barcodes are used to identify the medication. So it's not a human writing things down, it's a barcode to pharmacy, sometimes pharmacy robot. So a comprehensive, newly fully automated system is being introduced in 2011 in the medical centers of the University of California in San Francisco. And according to UCSF, not a single error has occurred in 350,000 doses of medication prepared during the system's recent phase-in. So that is, like I said, this automated system may well eliminate prescription error altogether. Hospital pharmacy robot barcodes. Robots read barcodes on medications, fill the medication orders, and keep track of the inventory. So barcodes on a patient wristband and on the medication can be scanned, and we can make sure that that is the patient that should receive the medication. So it makes the error rate essentially zero. Now the other thing is point-of-use drug dispensing, and it's a decentralized automated system. There's a small computer attached to a cabinet holding the medications, and so as a nurse is located at the bedside, so maybe they have to give the medication there, they're networked to the hospital computer, the nurse enters the passwords and selects the patient, enters a drug order, and a computer will then deliver it in an open drawer containing the medication. So we can be sure that we're giving the right medication to the right patient, and there's still a comparison of the drug as well as the medication as well as the patient's wristband. So the small computer attached to a cabinet holding medications keeps track of the inventory. It's connected to an ADA warning system, which decreases late and missed doses. So in other words, if there's a dose due for a dose, then the patient it'll alert the staff they need to be dosing that patient. And this has been introduced into doctors' offices and clinics also, so we can start managing that process even in those. We have computerized IVs and barcodes. So the risk of errors is far higher with intravenous drugs because you can't take them back. So two safety technologies that were introduced in 2006 was what's called a smart infusion system with dose error reduction system. So these are IV computers that the IV runs through, and it's dispensed via these computers. It's pre-programmed. So the two safety technologies were introduced in 2006, a BCMA, a barcode medication administration, uses barcodes to identify each patient and each medication, and according to clinical studies might prevent up to 58% of adverse drug events using as far as those medications. We also have radio frequency identification tags, RFID, including an antenna, a decoder to interpret data, and the tag, which includes information. The antenna sends signals, and when the tag detects the signal, it sends back information. The tags can be used to keep track of anything, people, inventory, or medications. We also have telepharmacy. It uses a computer, a network connection, and a drug dispensing unit to allow patients to obtain medications outside of a traditional pharmacy. Doctors enter the prescription in the computer link to the pharmacy, and the pharmacy sends a signal that opens the drug cabinets in the doctor's office or clinic. And this can be used for drugs that are narcotic drugs, if you will, or controlled drugs. Telepharmacy expanding due to the U.S. government interest, and states' regulation will differ from state to state, which causes all sorts of problems because, as I said in previous lecture, state regulation is different. If there's every state has its own version of the regulation. In 2010, the U.S. Navy began installing what might be the largest telepharmacy project yet, with 110 sites. So non-pharmacy staff will be able to dispense medications with real-time remote monitoring and checks by the licensed pharmacist at a remote location. So the pharmacist, we don't have to have a pharmacist at every site. The pharmacist can dispense that medication at the 110 sites. When a licensed pharmacist is needed, the staff presses a call button that rings at the other telepharmacy locations around the globe. The pharmacist answers and can see and hear the dispensing process by two-way audio and video. A chip with embedded drug implanted in the patient either releases drug by diffusion or biodegrades. So we have drug delivery by a chip. So we take a chip, we put it in the person, and we release that drug. The newer chips in development can deliver more than one medication at a time. So we can sort of manage that by chipping the patient, so to speak. Now, in RPI, if you will, in 2011, the researchers are developing electromagnetic liquid pistons, which might in the future deliver drugs on an implanted chip that can release timed doses of medication. So we're starting to see that improvement where we can release that medication directly in the bloodstream. Now, nanotechnology, we talked about before, is being used to treat skin cancer, and research is being done on the combination of light and nanotechnology in the treatment of other cancers. Now, nanoparticles carrying nitric oxide could kill bacteria and promote healing of MRSA, for instance, methicillin-resistant Staph aureus. We also have what are called nanoemulsions made of soybean oil, alcohol, water, and detergent, emulsified to droplets less than 400 nanometers diameter, which could be effective at killing bacteria, fungi, and viruses at the site. So researchers believe that nanoemulsions can be used in the treatment of secondary burns. So nanoemulsions have the benefit of being able to penetrate the skin and cause a faster healing. So the impact of IT on the pharmacy: fewer pharmacists are needed to serve the same population. And as much as there's a nursing shortage in the United States, there's also a pharmacist shortage, if you will. Robots may be replacing pharmacists, allowing more involvement with patients and able to increase the scope and breadth and depth of their care. The introduction of computerization in the drug delivery process reduces ADEs and lowers medication areas. And telepharmacy allows one pharmacist to serve a wide geographic area and is a convenience for patients. So people don't have to go to the pharmacy kind of comes to them. So we looked at the pharmacy and information technology, and that completes this chapter. Thank you very much.